Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Normal Guy of the North here, and today we're doing a focused deep dive into one of the most misunderstood topics in World of Warships. What actually makes a player truly great? Not good, not lucky, not someone who has one amazing game and 5 terrible ones. We're talking about the players who consistently influence a match from the opening seconds all the way to the final minute, and do it in ways that casual observers never even notice. And here's the key point. Greatness in WoWs has very little to do with raw numbers. Damage, PR, and kills are the result of great decisions. They're not the foundation for them. So today we're going beyond the stats and looking at the behaviors and mindsets that separate everyday players from the true masters of this game. Let's start with the most important trait. Great players play the map, not the gun range. When you watch a top-tier player, they're not tunnel-visioned on the target directly in front of them. They're constantly reading the map. They're checking where the destroyers are, where radar ships are rotating, which flank has leverage, and which flank is about to collapse. They're not reacting to what's happening, they're anticipating what's about to happen. Here's a quick example. If you're in a destroyer and you see an enemy radar cruiser slow down behind an island, a great player instantly knows that radar is coming online and they reposition preemptively. Most players wait until the radar hits them and then panic. One is proactive, one is reactive. That single difference is the foundation of high-level play. The second major trait is positional discipline. Great players rarely put themselves somewhere the enemy wants them to be. They control their angles, their distances, and their escape routes. They think in 3 steps, not 1. Before they even fire, they already know how they're going to drop spot. Before they push, they already know where their support is. And before they kite, they know exactly how much space they have behind them. A simple example, a cruiser farming from behind an island. A good player sits still and hopes the island keeps them safe. A great player fires 3 salvos, senses the pressure building, reverses out early, and rotates before the enemy can box them in. That tiny, subtle timing difference often decides whether you live or die 2 minutes later. Another core skill is engagement shaping. Great players do not take fights the enemy wants. They take fights on their own terms. If a battleship wants a long-range duel, a great cruiser denies it. If a destroyer wants to brawl in a cap, a great DD forces them into open water instead. If a submarine wants to chase a battleship bow-on, the battleship simply turns early and denies the drop angle. Engagement shaping is the art of forcing the enemy into low-value positions while putting yourself into high-value ones. And this flows directly into the next trait, tempo control. Tempo is simply the pace of a flank who's dictating the rhythm of the fight. Great players know when to hit pause and when to accelerate. They know when to back off for 30 seconds to wait for support, and they know when to suddenly push forward to break an enemy rotation. When you see a player who always seems to strike at the perfect moment, that's not luck. That's tempo recognition. Now let's talk about information processing. Great players pull more information from the minimap in 10 seconds than most players pull in an entire match. They notice when a destroyer's spotting pattern changes. They notice when shells land from an unspotted direction. They notice who's losing HP and where. And most importantly, they use that information immediately. For example, you're in a battleship, and suddenly the enemy DD that was screening the flank disappears early. A great player knows exactly what that means. Either radar scared them off, or torpedoes are already in the water. So they angle early, turn early, and avoid taking the hit. Most players only turn when the torpedo alarm goes off. At that point, it's too late. Another pillar of greatness is pattern recognition. After thousands of matches, top players see behaviors others miss. They know how most destroyers will enter the A-cap on North. They know how most battleships rotate on Two Brothers. They know that most cruisers will show broadside right after they dodge a torpedo spread. These patterns make the game predictable. And once the game is predictable, it becomes controllable. Another huge separator is risk management. Great players absolutely take risks, but they take calculated risks. Every move they make weighs cost versus reward. Is firing worth being spotted? Is pushing worth losing an escape route? Is chasing a kill worth opening yourself to crossfire? Great players avoid low-value deaths because they never gamble blindly. They assess, they decide, and they commit only when the trade is favorable. And let's talk about patience, because this is the hardest skill for most players to develop. Great players aren't in a hurry. They don't rush damage. They don't YOLO for one exciting moment. They know that waiting just 30 seconds can completely flip the advantage. A destroyer might burn their damage control early. A cruiser might turn too aggressively. A battleship might become isolated. Sometimes the most powerful move is simply waiting for the enemy to make the first mistake. What really ties all of this together is their mindset. Great players treat every match like a new puzzle. They don't tilt, they don't blame their team, they don't rage at RNG. They focus on what they can control. When they die, they ask why. When they win, they ask what worked and why it worked. That self-awareness is one of the biggest reasons they improve continuously while other players plateau for years. Now, let's bring in a little gameplay example to illustrate this. Imagine a destroyer entering the B cap on Trident. A good player rushes in, pops smoke when spotted, and hopes their team shoots at whatever's spotting them. A great player approaches slowly, watches the minimap for radar ships turning in, checks plane positions, predicts where the enemy DD will appear, and only commits when the risk is acceptable. And when that destroyer does spot the enemy DD, the great player doesn't panic smoke. They angle away while shooting, ready to disengage if radar activates. It's controlled, disciplined, and intentional, and that's what wins caps without dying. Another great example is how battleships handle crossfires. A good player fires whenever something is spotted. A great player holds fire until a cruiser commits to a turn. They wait. They observe. They strike at the exact moment when the target cannot angle. That single salvo can delete a ship or cripple their confidence, collapsing an entire flank. This is not about damage, it's map influence. And let's not forget the importance of adaptability. Great players don't have one play style. They adapt based on the spawn, the team lineup, the early trades, and the behavior of both teams. If a flank collapses early, they reposition without complaining. If support is lacking, they play safer instead of forcing a doomed push. If opportunities open suddenly, they take them decisively. Adaptability is what keeps great players relevant in every match, regardless of the circumstances. Another defining trait is win condition awareness. Great players always know what must happen for their team to win. They know which cap matters most. They know which enemy ship poses the greatest threat. They know which teammate they need to support and which teammate is already a lost cause. They don't waste time chasing pointless damage when the match requires map control. They adjust their priorities dynamically based on the evolving situation. Here's an example. It's late game on Hotspot. Your team is down on points but has 2 caps. The enemy has 1 cap but more ships alive. A good player might chase a low-health cruiser for the kill. A great player recognizes that the match will be decided by the next cap flip. Instead of chasing, they support the DD trying to retake the center. That's win condition thinking, and it's why great players convert far more close games into victories. Let's talk about another subtle but critical skill: exit management. Great players always know how they'll get out of a fight before they even enter it. They think backwards from danger. They know where to turn, where to drop spot, and where to reposition. This keeps them alive longer, and staying alive is one of the biggest competitive advantages in WoWs. Dead ships do zero influence. Alive ships dictate the match. And this ties into cumulative advantage. Great players don't rely on big moments. They win through small, incremental gains, a few thousand damage at a time, a denied cap, a forced heal, a suppressed flank. These little advantages stack up. By the mid-game, the enemy feels squeezed. By the late game, the great player still has resources left while the enemy team is exhausted and cornered. The match wasn't won with one big play, it was won through 100 small, smart decisions. Finally, all of these traits come together to create something few players ever reach: controlled dominance. Not flashy dominance. Not lucky dominance. Controlled dominance, the ability to shape the flow of the match through decision quality, positioning, patience, and timing. It's the most powerful form of mastery in this game. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. And please feel free to click on the videos on your screen for more World of Warships content. But as always, take care, stay safe, and I wish you all the best. See you in the next one, and bye for now.